Now, there's a new poll by American Research and Polling. Scott Mandami at 37%, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, 17, Andrew Cuomo, former governor, 25, current mayor Eric Adams at 11. Now, everybody asks me, is Mandami going to win? I think it's still a jump ball here because I don't think Adams is going to be able to go from now until Election Day. He's running out of money. Could be wrong. If Adams drops, then those votes have to go somewhere. So joining us now from New York City is the Republican contender for mayor, Curtis Sliwa. You know him. I don't have to introduce him. Spent his whole life in the city fighting crime and doing good things on balance, I would say. I know Curtis for a long time. So I took care of Mandami. You don't have to bother with him. But I got 5 issues here. I want to know exactly what you would do if you do get elected mayor. The first one is no bail. So Albany, the capital of the state, has basically passed a law that says judges have very little discretion in assigning bail to violent criminals. And there's a whole list of this one. You can't have any bail. How does a mayor overcome that?
Well, number one, that's all due to Andrew Cuomo, 2019, no cash bail, and he's doubled down on that in wanting to somehow resurrect his political career and become mayor. That will haunt us. What you have to be able to do is pinpoint the judges who are not utilizing any judicial control and hiding behind the no cash bail, and you got to name them and shame them. That's not happening whatsoever. And then, more importantly, you have to hearken back to what was the 1-2 punch. When Rudy Giuliani beat David Dinkins, the crime rate was far more horrific. 2,100 murders a year, 10,000 unsolved shootings. He barely beat Dinkins the second time that he challenged him. And then quickly thereafter, a man that nobody knew, unseated, a man who many thought was an iconic figure in the Democratic Party, Mario Cuomo, the father of Andrew Cuomo now. With that 1-2 punch, you can make all the difference in the world. So if I get elected, and I intend on getting elected, I pave the way for Elise Stefanik to beat Kathy Hochul, because if Elise can get 33, 34% of the vote in the city in the next election, then you'll have a Republican mayor and a Republican governor who can go to work on both the city council that is predominantly progressive and the state legislature that is predominantly progressive.
All right. It's a big if, but it makes sense. Most of the crime in New York City on the street.
There's also one other thing, Bill, real quickly. The mayor does get to appoint some of the judges, obviously.
Obviously you wouldn't have
them to leave.
And we know the judges are the problem, but just exposing them, these people have no shame, and you know that. They don't care. Most of the street crime in New York City is committed by drug addicts who need money to buy whatever they're using and killing themselves with. They're allowed to run wild, set up tents, live on the street, inject narcotics in front of children, degrade public safety. It's horrendous. Same thing's happening in most progressive cities. What would you do with these drug addicts?
The quality of life that everybody is exposed to, it doesn't matter, the subways, brings everybody together. So if you don't see it in your neighborhood, you're eventually going to see it on the subway. They must be removed. For their
remove
own,
where though? Where are you going to remove them?
Well, number one, there are state hospitals that have plenty of empty space. Unfortunately, when Andrew Cuomo fled to Albany because he was going to be impeached, he had downsized the number of state beds available for people with mental health disorders and drug addiction disorders.
Do you force them though? Okay, there are enough facilities in New York State. It's a big state to put these people in, but most of them don't want rehab. They don't want to go there. How do you get them there?
Right. Well, you don't have harm reduction clinics that provide the addict not only with the needles, but with a nurse to properly inject them, which then destroys the fabric of the quality of life in that neighborhood, because everybody who's a drug user comes in there. I mean, if you're going to go to that step, you might as well give them the drugs for free, because all it does is bring the drug dealers into a location as if they were vendors at Yankee Stadium.
No, and they're all selling that is right. But again, the question remains, you know what the problem is, I know what the problem is. But if you try to forcibly remove drug addicted people from the city, you're going to run into the ACLU, you're going to run into Albany legislature. How do you get around that?
You have 1,000 lawyers and corporation counsel that we pay, and all they do is settle lawsuits. You're going to go into court. You're going to battle the civil libertarian group. You're going to battle legal aid. You're going to battle everybody who practices the art of I sue. You're going to win some. You're going to lose some. But you see, the taxpayers are going to know that you got their back. And if somebody is out there and they're involved in drug trafficking and drug use, you got to lock them up. Because time and time again, men and women who have had serious drug issues have said they've been able to dry out in prison. And then you got to make sure that they have proper rehab so that
okay, but you can't put them in prison because that doesn't fall under the bail thing. I mean, if you could isolate them for a few days, that would improve the problem because then they can't get their drugs. All right, the third one is there are thousands of migrants who come into the country illegally, get on a bus, and come to New York City. How is Mayor Sliwa going to stop that?
Well, number one, we have a number of migrants who are an integral part of the business of New York City. You start doing ICE raids in the back rooms of every restaurant in New York City, they're out of business. You start doing ICE raids in the hotel and the accommodation industry, they're out of business. You got to give them a vehicle. And President Trump has talked about that from time to time. They need a special vehicle to be able to stay and do the work that my three sons will not do, and this generation of millennials and Gen Zs are not going to do. It's very easy.
All right,
for
so
us
you would make it
everyone.
easier, but again, that's a federal duty, not a city or state duty. And I'm not sure Donald Trump, he may do it, but it would take a while. So when they flood in here and look at Queens, they've taken over blocks, set up brothels, set up drug dens, set up this and that. And the city of New York doesn't cooperate with ICE. Now, I know you would. You'd write an executive order that says, all the NYPD have got to alert ICE. That would be a big step, but then the city council is going to undermine you on that.
Well, also, you invite in FBI Director Patel, because a lot of it is done by the narco terrorists who are also engaged in sex trafficking. You close those locations down. You go after the absentee landlords. They're allowing their buildings to be utilized for this trafficking. The pimps and the madams and the people who benefit. And to the ladies who have been procured for this business, you see if you can get them back on track. But there is a way to stop this activity that is being fueled by these narco terrorists and these cartels. Now, the president has announced he wants to go to war against the cartels. This is one clear way of doing it, and I would be fully cooperative with the president and his agencies in vetting them out of New York City, where they are having direct impact on crime.
Cold and flu season coming on up. We all know it, and it really is nothing to take lightly. So when people start getting sick all across the country, medications disappear. Everybody wants it at the same time. So it's very, very smart to have a pharmacy you can count on, like All Family Pharmacy. Right now, they're helping Americans get ahead of the curve with 10% off antibiotics, antivirals, other essentials. You know how important it is to have the right meds when you get sick, particularly when your kids get sick. You don't want to be going into the doctor's office, spending all the time. You want to have them at your home. So if you have a few months' supply, you don't have to worry. And that's what we're doing here. If you believe in in medical freedom, okay, and taking care of your family, as I do, this is the pharmacy for you. Please go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Bill. Use code BILL10 to save 10%. The city is filthy. You know the city as well as any human being on earth. I'm second. The city's filthy. How are you going to clean it up?
You set it up by working with the existing agencies. You free up the police, especially with coming.
The police aren't going to sweep up the. What's wrong with the Department of Sanitation in New York City? Why are garbage cans overflowing? Why are rats running all over the place? Why is this happening?
Why it's happened? Because we've allowed the unions too much control over the workday of their men and women. So, perfect example. Sanitation department, once they're finished their route of picking up the trash, they go back to what they call the barn and they wait around until their 8 hours is finished. Used to be when I was a kid and you were a kid, Bill, the sanitation department had brooms on the front of the truck. They would have to clear off all the sewers and the catch basins, and they would have to do proper maintenance. Now that they no longer do it, we have these business improvement districts which exhibit an additional tax on the local merchants, driving them out of existence because now they're paying the normal tax, corporate tax rate, they're paying property tax, and now they have to pay a special business
But
improvement
how do
tax.
you convince the unions to do a better job? They obviously don't want their people working as hard as their people could work.
So you have to bring this to the attention of the people. They're paying for the service. They're
They-
entitled to the
People
service.
know it. All right, last
Well,
question.
they know it, but
Last
the mayor
question.
has never actually brought it to their attention of how much is being paid and how little service is being done. Look, the previous sanitation commissioner, Jessica Tisch, took half the cans away from the corners where you would put the trash. They've taken the cans out of the subways with the idea that somehow you're going to carry the trash up to the street. These are not common sense
No, they're
solutions.
not.
And
All right, last question. One of the primary reason Mamdani is leading in the polls is the cost of living in New York. The most expensive cities in the world, younger people, and that comprises most of his voters, they say, I can't make it in New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, but I can't make it here. Everything is too expensive. Can a mayor drive down costs?
Oh, absolutely. Number one, you have to move to start slashing the taxes, the personal income tax, the corporate tax, and then the property tax. And then there's a trickle down effect. And then you have all the hidden taxes. You have speed cameras everywhere, which is just meant to pick your pocket. Fees and fines that drive you almost to the verge of bankruptcy each month. And then you have to reach out to the millennials and Gen Zers and said, we made you a promise. If you got a 4-year education, 2 years of graduate school, you were a CPA, a financial analyst, or a lawyer making $150,000 to start, they say, well, why am I still living in an apartment with 3 or 4 other roommates? It's like I'm back in college in a dormitory. And you have to say there are 100,000 apartments that are warehoused out there, Bill, leading with 6,000 in NYCHA projects alone. We've got to free up those locations to put them out in the marketplace, meet with the landlords, and find out specifically what their needs are. And generally, it comes to tenant-landlord court. The landlords have no rights in tenant-landlord court. You have men and women who have been squatting in their apartments since the lockdown and pandemic, 6, 7 years, and
That's
nothing
true.
happens. In City Hall,
I don't know if the
level
landlords, though, are going to help you out on that one. But anyway, Curtis, if you get elected, you're going to be busy. I think you know that. The city is really, really on the cliff. And thanks for appearing today. Good luck. We'll check in with you before the election.